Hello everybody and welcome back to another Kings of War Battle Report. I'm Visibly Riley, and today we have Twilight Kin versus Trident Realm. This battle was fought at 2300 points and the scenario was Raze. So first off, we have my opponent's army, which opens with two hordes of Depth Horrors, one of whom has the J-Boots, the other the Potion of the Caterpillar. Then we have two hordes of Gigas, one with the Dwarven Nail and one with the Chalice of Wrath, two Thule Troops, a Kraken, the Trident King, Double Knucker, a Naiad Wormrider Centurion, Ector, and a Thule Mythicin with Bane Chant 2. The first thing I'll say about this army is that, yes, I know that it's 50 points down. I don't know where those 50 points were. Maybe the Centurion has Crystal Pendant of Retribution? I don't know. Whatever. It's somewhere. I couldn't figure it out. I know all these items are in the army in that form, and the Bane Chant is true, but I just couldn't figure out the other 50 points. But ignoring that, my thoughts on the army are I like it. I like it quite a bit. I think that a lot of times when people build Trident Realm armies, or at least talk about building Trident Realm armies, they get stuck on the Depth Horror cycle where they just put Depth Horrors in because they've heard or they think that those are the best unit in the army, which even if that's true, it doesn't mean that they're the only thing in the list. The Trident Realm army actually has quite a bit of depth to it. So yeah, I like that this army has them in it because they are a great piece, they are fearless, they do a lot of damage, they've got a great damage ceiling. But the Gigas Hordes offer something that they don't, which is they've got that Def 6, and more importantly, no, I guess not more importantly, but also important, is that Nimble. It's so good. And then they've got the 12 attacks with Vicious and I think Crushing 2. Yeah, Crush 2. So their damage output is a lot more steady, but their ceiling is a little lower, right? So I like Gigasaurs. I think they're great, and I think this list really shows off why. Now, Thule Troops are one of my favorite units in the game. I actually love Thule of all kinds. I love the Mythicin, the Aquamage, and the units themselves. I just wish there were a few more Thule, actually, because I think they're really neat. Thule Troops are great. They are pretty easy to take care of with something like Lightning Bolt, but otherwise they're relatively resilient, at least resilient enough to accept, to get their job done, which is they've got 20 attacks, so they're one of those chaff units that gets in there and really rips up another chaff unit and then dies, right? It replaces it. So it's a great tempo piece. If you've ever heard me talk about tempo before, this is one of those. Next up, I think the Kraken's a great monster, especially when it is backed up by Double Knuckers. And Ector, I think, with Morgoth's recent changes, is probably the best special character in the game, or the best living legend in the game. Just an excellent piece that is relatively affordable, so you can just field it in any point value and be fine with that, as long as you're not playing 500 points. But here's a tip: 500 points is a bit of a waste of time. But anyway, the only thing in the army that I'm not immediately a huge fan of is the Trident King. The Trident King I've seen quite a few times up here because Trident Realm is actually a popular army up here in the Pacific Northwest, but I just don't like the Trident King, and it's done well against me all those times. It's just something about it that I just never end a game and go, if it weren't for that pesky Trident King, I would have won. Outside of a few times when the Trident Kings come around and, hit with 12 out of 12 shots or some nonsense. But that's more, if it weren't for those pesky dice, I would have won this game. We've all done that. So anyway, that's the only thing I might rewrite in my version of this, but otherwise I think it's a great list. Let's move on to my Twilight Kin list. Now, this is not the Twilight Kin list I brought to Call to Arms. That one was a lot more aggressive, but it is a Twilight Kin list, so that's got to count for something. First up, we open with two hordes of Tall Spear, one of whom has the Hammer of Measured Force, the other the Healing Brew. Then I have two regiments of Impalers, three regiments of Crone-bound Butchers, two Mind Screeches, two Summoner Crones, one of whom has the Boots of Levitation, the Scepter of Shadows, the other has the Wings of Honey Maze. Then I have two Dragon Breath, an ASB with a Loot of Insatiable Darkness, and Mikhail. My thoughts on this army are, it's pretty good. Twilight Kin, because of the way that they unlock, have a pretty standard core. You're going to have your Tall Spear or your Impalers, your Blade Dancers, and your Abyssal Horsemen. I think the Blade Dancers are likely the least popular, and for good reason. They are a little expensive for a 20 attack unit. I think if there weren't Soul Reavers and Reapers in the game, they'd be pretty well priced, but those Reapers are 210, 215 for a regiment, and they have 25 attacks with Crush 1 instead of, having Thunderous 1 and Elite with +1 speed. It's just, I don't know. But anyway, I have run them, and I have been met with success, but it is a bit of a difficult one for me to stomach to put them out there. I mean, they don't have Stealthy, they don't have Ensnare, they've got no defensive tech, and they aren't that offensive with merely 20 attacks. So anyway, I think that you're going to see a lot of armies that kind of look like this, with some mixture of 4 regiments and or hordes, where you've got your Tall Spear, your Abyssal Horsemen, and your Impalers. Which are all excellent. I also think that Butcher regiments are probably the best chaff in the game. I actually like them more than I like Revenant Cav, but only because outside of Undead, you can't get Revenant Cav troops, or Empire does, but that's a whole different story. So you can get Butchers, right? So their ally potential is much higher, and then the regular Butchers actually have Mind Thirst, which I consider great. I actually, when I was playing my CTA game, I was 10 points down, and about halfway through the game, I was like, I should have spent 10 points to just upgrade 2 of my Butcher regiments to being regular Butchers instead of Cronebound, because Mind Thirst is that good of a rule. It's worth the 5-point upgrade. So anyway, Cronebound Butchers are great. Double Mind Screech does about the damage I need, along with the Summoner Crones and the Dragon Breath, to delete smaller units, not necessarily chaff units, but even Def 4 regiments, right? It can get rid of pretty well, and against Def 3, even better. The only thing I will say about that block is that, or I'll say more, but the Dragon Breath, I don't get that unit. I played it in this game, which is fine, but it's 5 points more than a weapon team in exchange for 2 more attacks and Elite. And you lose +1 Def, Piercing, and Nimble, right? Like, I look at that and I'm like, how are those ones nimble and the Dragon Breath are not, right? It sucks. Especially, like, the Reckon one, it's -2 nerve, but it's going to be rallied, so I'd consider that more -1 nerve, right? Even though it can get the +2, and elves have no way to get rally. So I just look at that and I'm like, why is the Dragon Breath Def 4? Why is it not nimble, right? Why is it 90 points? So, especially with the nerfs to breath attacks in this edition, I'm a little wary about that unit. I'm not sure I will be keeping it in future editions of this, regardless of how well they do in this game. And lastly, Mikael. What a beast. I actually read him wrong when I was first playing this game, but I'll talk about that later. Yeah, an amazing unit. The only thing that I would like Mikael for 260 points to have is to have some reason to also be Cronebound on the keyword. That would be amazing. But I get why. I mean, he's already so good. So anyway, I like this army. I think it's pretty fun, and I think it's one of the archetypes that you'll start seeing with Twilight Kin, and this one is a bit more defensive. So let's move on to the game with the mission. So Raze is an interesting one. It is a mission with 7 objective points, or 7 objective markers. 1 is in the dead center of the table, and then you and your opponent place 3 each. After you roll for sides, you have to place them, but you have to place them 6 inches from the center line, so exactly 18 inches up to their center. They cannot be placed anywhere else on the table. They have to be placed somewhere on that line. So it's pretty obvious to, it's not obvious, but it's easy to guess where your opponent's going to place them, because there are very limited areas, because they still have to be 12 inches away from each other, and so on and so forth. At the beginning of round 2, you can start burning them, and that's actually how you score them in this mission. You fly to your opponent's side of the table, you control an objective marker on their side, and then you score 1 VP by destroying it at the end of your turn. Now, you can't do that on the ones on your side, but you can contest them, obviously. The objective in the center of the table is just worth 1 objective point if you control it at the end of the game, and that is it. So I like Raze. It's closer to true dynamic scoring, which is one of it's the big thing I think Kings of War is lacking, is dynamically scored scenarios to really be, in my mind, a top-end competitive game. Which already, it's pretty top-end, right? I'm just saying, like, to make it better. So anyway, let's look at the table. First off, we've got these objective markers. The ones in purple are the ones my opponent placed, the blue one is the center, and this red one are the ones that I placed. you can see that they're on these lines, and we're using these large neoprene mats because they have a 25 mil center, and then this is 3 inches of radius, right? So it's really helpful to be able to tell exactly where the 3-inch mark is instead of getting out a tool or anything like that. You just go, my unit is clipping it, right? It's pretty obvious. And if you were ever a War Machine player, you'll recognize these things. I know that I was made aware of them by Mark Taylor, and I was like, oh, of course, right? When they were introduced in Mark II of War Machine, became a big thing. I was like, wow, these are amazing. So I'm really happy to see them make their way into Kings of War because they are pretty good. I will say on my objective planning here, I had to place the first one down. And once I took this overhead picture after they were all down, I'm like, why did I place this one over here? Right? Like, I already noticed, I already knew what side I was on. So I was going to be trying to abuse this hill because Mind Screeches on the hill are nightmarish. But why is this over here then? I should have been pushing on this side, right? And had this be my 2 side, this be my 1 side. Because you have to have a 2 and a 1 side on this in Raze, right? But yeah, it's small mistake there, but it might be pretty costly considering there aren't that many objectives to go after in the game. So we'll see about that. And with that, let's look at the terrain. So first off, we have 2 height 9 forests, as you can see there in green. Then we have 2 height 1 flat pieces, or not flat. They're height 1. I actually think that's a mistake. We didn't put any of the markers we generally put on these pieces when we want them to be height 1 or height 2. So these must be actually height flat, I think was the intention. But I forgot to ask, and spoiler alert, it doesn't come up. Which it wouldn't come up. Well, I guess it would. We have quite a few units it would come up for. But anyway, it doesn't come up, I don't think. Then we have 2 height 3 hills, followed by 2 height 2 obstacles, right? This one in the middle is actually pretty interesting because half of it is on the hill, which makes it negates that +1 thunderous you get from charging down a hill. This is already very small hill, so it's hard to have the majority of your unit on it already, and especially to not clip this while you're going, charging down off of it. So it's an interesting one. And then lastly, we have 2 height 7 impassables. The one down here is just a pile of rocks. I think my opponent forgot the extra piece, but whenever you have it's always interesting when you don't have perfect shapes, right? You have these strange or geometric ones because of how you can use impassable terrain in Kings of War to block flank charges, to block charges in general, but generally flanks. It's weirder when you have stuff like this because certain units will clip into this, into these little grooves. Some of them won't be able to do that. It's a little messy, but it is fun from time to time to use it. I'm not trying to speak against it. You just have to be careful to not knock it over because it's kind of a big deal. But anyway, so that is it for the terrain, and let's go into deployment. Well, here's the end of deployment shot, but let's go into the specifics with the Trident Realm. So starting on the left, we have 2 Knuckers, one in front of the other. Just pretty standard deployment for Knuckers, but I'm not sure this is the best way to play them. I've seen a lot of people do it this way. Maybe I just haven't. I've seen it, the negatives of it a few too many times. So anyway, moving over to the right of that, we have the Trident King, followed by the first Gigas Horde, the one with the Chalice of Wrath. Then we have on the left the Depth Horrors Horde with the J Boots, followed by the Thule Mythicon, which is right here. We've got the Kraken hanging out, the Thule Troop, and the second Gigas Horde with the Dwarven Hail. Over here, accidentally unmarked, is Ector. I actually didn't even see him there. But yeah, so we've got Ector right there behind the house. Then we have the second Thule Troop. Behind them is the Depth Horrors with Caterpillar. And finally, the Naiad Wormrider Centurion. So this is obviously the weak flank that my opponent has deployed, but it's actually not that weak. It's a lot faster than most of the stuff in my army. And on top of it, all these units, they have very high damage. Well, this one doesn't, but these two have very high damage ceilings due to their high number of attacks. So we'll see how that works out. And Ector is always a nightmare to fight with. And facing opposite of that, we'll start it's on my right side of deployment. We have the Tall Spear Horde with Potion of Healing and the Tall Spear Horde with Hammer of Measured Force. The keen-eyed of you might notice that those are not spears, those are bows. That is because I have spear models I could use. I have a ton of Blackguard that are painted. But the rest of my army, because this is a dual-purpose army between my Night Stalkers and my Twilight Kin, I want to make sure that they match thematically, that the models match, and I haven't exactly figured out how I'm going to do my Spearmen out of my Forces of Everblight range. I'll probably use a bunch of my Swordsmen. I'm not going to buy any models. That's one of the reasons I'm doing the army is because I already have a bunch of Everblight models. So I'll probably end up using the Swordsmen and modify them in some way to have a glaive, but I haven't got around to it yet. So instead, enjoy these 2 hordes of painted archers. They are interesting, at least, because, I mean, those are all 6th ed models painted, back in Warhammer 6th ed, and then these are 5th ed. So they are very old. I mean, these ones are over... Actually... Man, these ones are almost 20 years old. They're like 15, 16. These ones are definitely over 20 years old. So some old models there. And then behind them, actually, I forgot to mark it just because it looks so similar to this because, surprise, it was part of the same army. This is my ASB with the Loot of Insatiable Darkness. Then to the right of that, we have the first 2 Butcher Regiments right there and right there. Again, it'll be the Yetis. I have models for it. You guys, if you've watched any of my Night Stalker reports, you know what they look like. They are these big ogre-ish models. But I actually didn't have any more bases that were ogre size. So while those get to me, we'll just have to use Yetis in the meantime. Behind them is the first Impaler Regiment. Then to the right of that, we have the 2 Dragon Breath over here. I'm using the models I use for my planar apparitions right now. Again, I do have a conversion for that, but these are painted, and I think they do just fine. They're a little tall, though. We have the 2nd Impaler Regiment hiding back here. And because the picture is a little bit too much information, let's do it this way. So we have both the Summoner Crones in between the Dragon's Breath. The one in the front here is the one with the Boots of Levitation. So Drain Life 9 right there. And then the one in the back has Wings of Honeymaze. Now, they are almost the identical models, so I've literally written Wings on the one with the Wings of Honeymaze. So I know which one is which. And then we have the double Mind Screeches over here. And finally, to the far right... I guess there's nothing to the far right. So let's move on to turn 1. So turn 1 ends up going to the Trident Realm, and off here on the right flank, or the Trident Realm left flank, I'm just going to go from my perspective from now on. So on the right flank, you can see the units are just sort of rolling out. Ector can't shoot turn 1 if they go first, so just runs forward. The Naiad Centurion here is actually in range of being charged by my unit with the Healing Brew. And after this, my opponent just sits here messing with the base to get the frontage right. Because right now, if I charge in, these units can only charge me in the front, and I'm actually not sure they can all charge me, right? Like, the Thule definitely could, but I'm not sure the Street Sharks here are going to be able to fit in with how I'm going to be locked up on the side. So instead, my opponent just sits here fiddling with the base again and again to make sure that these are in the flank. So if I want to take a 6+, because I'm sure this unit has... Actually, it's a Worm Rider. I don't think they have Ensnare. But so it'd be a 5+ with Elite, and then 5+ or 4+ to wound. I will end up getting flanked by a lot, so not the best plan. But when it was a front charge, I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that. And over here on the left flank, we have both the Knuckers just running down the table, keeping on the edge. I really like this because it allows... Well, I don't like this movement quite so much because they're a little too close together. They can't fully rotate, but if they weren't, I really like this because it basically turns this into a deployment edge and gives them free reign to do whatever they want. They can see almost everything, and they're speed 9, so, Knucker doing Knucker things. Then we have the Trident King coming around this wall just to protect him a little bit. I actually don't have anything that can charge it, so it's not that relevant, but anyway. The Gigas rolling in front of one of my objectives, making sure I don't, get any cheeky ideas on running in there. Although, again, I don't have a speed 10 flyer, so And in the center, we have the J-Boot Street Sharks running into the forest. Now, they haven't popped it, obviously, because Strider would not help them here. But it'll make it so my opponent will have to choose between popping it or not if they ever want to charge. But I can also, I don't know, I could shoot at them. 5+ to hit is not great, but they are still def 3. So it's not a bad idea just to shoot them down. But I don't have the longest range shooting. I only have lightning bolt 12. So Probably not the best for me. The Kraken follows them up, just, protecting some flanks a little bit. The Thule Mythican behind them, and then these Gigas roll forward with the Thule back here. Now, what's important to notice is that because I don't think this has the Inspiring Talisman, again, there are 50 points missing, it means that these two units are not inspired, because the Mythican only... Or no, this is inspired. It's the Street Sharks that are not, because it only inspires Cephalopods, which Gigas and Depth Horrors are not. So anyway, but with that, this is the end of turn 1 for the Trident Realm. They don't have much shooting, and it's turn 1, you just run forward. It's Kings of War, guys. So let's move into turn 1 for the Twilightkin. So turn 1 Twilightkin, this is an overhead shot just to make it a little simpler to see. I move this Butcher Regiment forward onto the hill to put both the Mind Screeches behind it, because I've kept the Knuckers in the front of, definitely of this one, but of this Mind Screech to make sure that it is impossible to charge. They have to charge Butchers, and I don't care if Butchers live or die. I'm out of charge range of any of this stuff, but I can be charged by the Kraken and by the Trident King, obviously, and by the Knuckers if they want to come in. But if all that wants to go kill a regiment of Butchers, go right ahead. I move into the center with... Well, I do make a bit of a mistake here with my Impalers, which is just I wasn't as careful with their movement as I really should have been. I could have been... I don't know. I feel like if I just pivoted a bit more this way, it just opens me open. It makes me open to a lot more countercharges than to stare at this traffic jam, right? Like, I'm not going to make it through there anyway, so what's the point? I should have just cut to make sure that I can see up to this impassable, and then try to cover as much of this as possible. But that is mistake 1 of the game. In the center, I move forward with this regiment of Berserkers just to block up this unit of Gigas. Now, this is one of the reasons why I don't... I use the term chaff a lot because it's commonly understood, but it's not the best piece of... it's not the best nomenclature to be using, just because it's confusing, right? So I know a lot of people are talking about thick chaff. I'm not a huge fan of that bit of phraseology. It's fine, but it's still not addressing the actual problem, which is that people mean different things when they say chaff. So instead, I'm just going to say that I move these Butchers forward to be a jamming unit, right? I'm just trying to make sure that my opponent cannot push deeper into my deployment zone, nor can they charge these things, right? So I'm blocking possible charges over here, and I'm keeping them from crossing the center line. That's it, right? You could also use chaff in the way of like a tar pit, which is what Butchers generally are, because they're dash 15 and def 5. They're really good, but against this amount of stuff, they're just going to die. So just, I'm trying to be more descriptive in what I'm doing rather than just say chaff, because I don't think that's actually all that helpful, and I think that's why a lot of people get confused. One thing to notice or to mention is that the Butchers right here are out of charge arc of these Street Sharks. So it's important because otherwise it'd be a flank, and that would be too much in the center. I do end up blocking up the ability to charge, I think, on all this other stuff. I think I have some other pictures, so we'll wait to talk about that until later. And over here on the right, I just make sure that my units are mostly out of charge range. This unit can be charged by... They can both be charged by the Centurion. The ASB cannot be. And then this unit cannot be charged by anything else. And I think the Hammer of Measured Force can be charged by Ector and nothing else. So that's the idea. I do make a slight mistake, which is my ASB here is blocking this unit from being pushed away by Ector's Wind Blast, but I really should just be blocking the Hammer unit because, one, there's no terrain back here, so if I get pushed back, I don't get pushed into terrain, so it doesn't mess with my movement. And two, this is a way more valuable unit, so if you want to push away the unit that you're moving towards to fight, go ahead. I'm blocking your objective. So yeah, I made a mistake not placing this over here. Hopefully I do not repeat it in the future. As for some pictures, this is some of the close-ups. Now, here's the thing about the Butchers. When I was placing these, I meant to make it so all of this is in the front of the Butchers. But with terrain like this, it's just a little wibbly-wobbly, which you might notice by these proxy bases already being placed out here. Now, I wanted it all to be in the front. and something got messed up. I mean, it's definitely my fault. I'm the one that placed it. I'm just, too many moving parts and trying to swap between UB and live, which, by the way, is super bad. I had to play my 6th round call to arms, and I was just like, what am I doing? It's just fun. But anyway, yeah, the intention is to get everything in the front there. And again, the mistake with not rotating these guys more. Now, in the center, things are a bit better. One, the Dragon Breath here cannot be charged by any of these units because the distance between the Butchers and this Impassable is less than 75 millimeters, so they can't fit. Then I don't place my individuals, right? I place them slightly inside of my units, so they cannot be charged by anything out there because only the Mythican could fit, and the Mythican's too far and can't see, and all the things, right? So I'm safe to do whatever I want. And what's important about that is that this Drain 9 can see this unit, and then I also get 2 Dragon Breath, right? Because I put out a small line of line of sight through there, get within 12. Now, it is Def 6, so I did all this fancy maneuvering for probably very little damage, but it is, something to talk about, I guess. I do back them up, obviously, with some Impalers, just because the Butchers are probably going to die, and I need that combat. The other Butchers I keep back. I could have rushed forward, right, and maintained a line with these Butchers, but I actually wanted to keep them back just in case something decided to run forward, right? It just makes it more difficult to turn to face here. Like, they can't turn like this now because I'll have a flank. They have to be cognizant with the Kraken, right? If you get a random overrun or if you want to back up, all those are now more difficult just by keeping the unit back. And it's still going to be able to charge, and if they don't charge me, which is a huge mistake, I'm happy to hold back, right? I have a lot more shooting than they do, so yeah, just stuff like that. It's something to think about. And I've already talked about this flank, all about the mistake I made with the ASB, and we'll leave it at that. Let's go into shooting. So first off, we've got both the lightning bolts firing into the Thule Mythican, which is actually behind this Kraken. They are both actually on the hill. In case you're wondering, they're more than 50% on it, which means that they are height 8, so they can see over the Kraken, and I just chose to shoot into something that already had cover, because why not? And I think I managed 1 wound there, which isn't the best, but it's fine. 1 wound is 1 wound. And in the center here, I fire off with the Dragon Breath and the Drain Life 9. I couldn't get the other Drain Life, the Drain Life 6, because there's just no line of sight. And again, Gigas are nimble, so you don't want to be messing around too much with with possible charges from them. So I just use the Wings of Honeymaze to fly over here and get into a better position. So anyway, I fire off that Drain. I do pretty well. I think I do 6 wounds. Which is great. Even with the elite 24 shots, that's on 6s to wound. 4s to hit, 6s to wound, or actually 12 shots on 4s, 12 shots on 5s, all with elite, and then 6s to wound, and then 9 shots on 4s and 5s. I'll take 6. 6 is great, especially because I'm targeting those units without regen right now. Obviously, I mean, it's the better idea. And this army, as far as I know, doesn't have any heal. So, just get that chip damage when you can. And we move on to turn 2. So turn 2 for the Trident Realm. Yeah, you see here, it's actually very obvious that this guy has a flank charge, and I'm like, thought I checked that. But I must have just either messed up my measurement or bumped the unit, or when I was doing stuff with the Mind Screeches, I might have messed it up, which is all fair enough. But anyway, it's a flank charge there, and then a double from the Knucker here in the Trident King. That's a dead unit, but I guess that's okay. The Butchers just die, and there's not a whole lot on this flank anymore besides the Mind Screeches, which will just run away because they fly. So that's the idea there. In the middle, my opponent messes around with double charges quite a bit here. Obviously, the Thule can't charge because they can't see past the Gigas, but they do try to get... Maybe the Street Sharks could see me. Maybe they couldn't. I don't remember. We messed around with a bunch of charges. That might have been when we learned about the line of sight on the Sharks. But the big thing here is that this unit of Gigas, because they're so large, right, which is something you might forget about, they clip this just barely. They land on it, and that will end up with them being hindered. Oh, looks like I did 4 wounds. Right there? 4 wounds? Still pretty good. So yeah, a Kraken and the Gigas, I don't think my my butchers are long for the world, or for this world, but it's worth it if I can pick up either of these two units now with my combat blocks behind this butcher. It's definitely worth it, because the Kraken or the Gigas probably won't be able to one-shot my unit of Impalers if I send them in, and my Impalers might be able to kill them off with, obviously, some help from outside sources like Drain Life. Over here on the far right, yeah, my opponent just moves his units forward. This is just to keep everything in the front. I didn't notice this when I was taking the picture, but you can see it just a little bit right there, which is my opponent has left a gap between the Street Sharks and the Thule. I thought it was no gap, right? Like, I could have sworn this when when I took my next turn, but there's definitely a gap there that's visible just slightly. Again, we might have knocked it. This terrain, specifically these ones, these pieces of terrain are, they don't hold up very well because they've bowed due to the compound my opponent has put on them, and then they turn and spin around a whole bunch. So anyway, it looks like they're abreast, but they are not, which is important. And the Naiad Centurion just runs by me. I'm perfectly fine with this. Every turn, this Naiad Centurion runs away, and I do not turn to address it. As long as it can't charge anything, I'm okay with that, because that's a turn where it would have been a huge pickup if I then turned spears to deal with a unit that I couldn't even charge. Right? Like, that, you never want to address this right away. You have other stuff to deal with. So I'm fine with it running past me. I'm sure I would prefer it not run past me, but that's just the way I deployed, I guess. And here we go with the end of turn shot. So first off, on the far right with the shooting, Ector fires into my spearmen that were not protected by an ASB and wind blasts them into the woods, which sucks a lot. Not just because now they can't charge anything, but, well, not that they would. They'd be on 6s to hit the Thule and wound them on 4s because that's how the Hammer of Measured Force works. But, yeah, I just don't want to be in the woods because I want to be able to run, and I wanted to be able to grab this objective, right? Especially as these units have probably over-rotated to be able to deal with me. And there's nothing over here that can deal with me, as you can see with my opponent's reforms. So, anyway, meh. It's what happens. In the center, my unit of butchers gets destroyed. Now, I say destroyed, but I will talk about this. This unit, they actually didn't do that. I know my opponent cast Banechant on this, so the unit of Gigas had Banechant, so they crushed 3. But even those 2 units combined only get me to 8 wounds, I want to say. It was a 7 to kill me twice, and I don't think the Kraken has Brutal. So, yeah, it was... I mean, that's slightly better, and it's like a 27% chance to kill me because I'm inspired and I die, which hitting those 7 twice is just big news, right? It's really, really good. But at the end, on the average, I'd be dead anyway. So it sucks. It sucks because of that, but I'm not particularly upset. And over here, yeah, my opponent actually rolls terribly, like really terribly, and needs a 6 twice to kill me due to Mikhail inspiring me. But yeah, it gets that as well. So, a bit unfortunate, but I can still pick some units up, and I think things are still looking pretty okay for the Twilight Kin, although I'm going to have to use a lot of my chaff elements, obviously, to deal with this on my turn 2. So Twilight Kin turn 2, first off, I send my Impalers into this Knucker. It's a real shame. My opponent has the ability to, because this is a flank and not a front, has the ability to turn all these units all willy-nilly to get it all to work. So I can't charge this Kraken, or this Knucker in the flank with anything because my base would then overlap the Trident King. All my units are in the front of the Trident King to hit that ensnare, and then I have to charge this guy in the front to hit the ensnare, which is the best target for me to go into just because the Trident King cannot see me. But I really need to kill it because I don't want to get flanked by a Knucker. Although it's still only 6 attacks, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. But anyway, I then fly one of my Mind Screeches over the nonsense. I am an inch away, perspective. But I'm an inch away to then shoot into this hot nonsense. I think the idea is to shoot down the Mythican or the Street Sharks. Either would be good. And then the other Mind Screech just follows up one of my Dragon Breaths, which is blocking the Gigas, which is the only thing that can charge it. Oh, I guess the Street Sharks could too. But both of them are blocked by this one Dragon Breath because it's a perfect corner to corner. I'm out of line of sight of the Trident King, and nothing else can see me. So it's pretty good, and I'll get one round of shooting with this thing before it dies. In the center, now this ends up being pretty interesting. The Kraken might look like it's facing this way. It's not. It's facing that way. You can see the notch in its base. It turns to face the Impalers. My Butchers over here do charge into the Gigas, then my Impalers charge into the Kraken, and then MacLeod, after this Dragon Breath gets out of his way, charges into the flank of the Kraken. And MacLeod has that special rule, the Umbral Sword or Sword of Umbra or whatever it is, that doubles his attacks against Titans, monsters, and characters. So yeah, it's really good here. That's 12 attacks. There's no ensnare, and because the Kraken is only def 4, that's 12 attacks on 3s and 2s with elite. So I'm all about that, right? With the Impalers in the front, I think I might be able to drop him, and I bring Dread into this fight along with the Gigas. So pretty good. And then the rest of my shooting just maneuvers to mess about. I put this Dragon's Breath here to protect my units, because again, MacLeod and then this Dragon's Breath will protect my little wizard from anything that might be able to charge him or charge her. And then she can see right through into the Thule for a big old drain. I fly my Wings of Honey Maze over the line. I can shoot this turn, but I did forget, like in my head, I'm like, oh, it's just a normal wizard, right? Forgetting, for whatever reason, what a Mythican is. So I'm like, oh no, halfway through my turn, I have to kill that Mythican, because otherwise my Summoner Crone is going to get the shit beaten out of her for no reason. So unfortunately, we're just going to have to see how that goes. I would prefer to take out this unit of Thule and the Street Sharks. That would have been the big grab there. But instead, I'm going to have to deal with the Mythican as well. And over here on the far right, I send the Healing Brew Spearman into the Thule. It's 6s to hit. Yeah, it's not great. I'm just, there's nothing there. It's like 5 or 6 hits on average, and then I wound on 3s, which is good. But that's still only like 4 wounds. So I'm not looking forward to this too much, but I don't think, even with 4 wounds, I can pretty easily get a waiver on the Thule, which would be fine, because the Street Sharks plus Ector, I'm not sure they can actually take my spears in one go, and my nerve, being so high, I think they're 21, 23, I think I'm not even going to be wavered with that charge, so I'm all about that. Let's go, and if I can kill the Thule, even better. And here's how it all turns out. So starting on the left, my Impalers go into the Knucker. I roll really well. I do 8 wounds, which is incredible. And then I only get a waiver. So I couldn't roll that 7 twice. Again, that's, it's a 27%, but I don't hit it, unlike my opponent. So I do get a waiver though. So, it's not all bad. In the shooting phase, I do manage to, first off, I get the Thule here to double once. Then I have to fire everything I can into this Mythican that I've misplaced. So this drain goes into the Thule, gets them pretty high. I think I fire one of the Dragon Breath, probably this one, into them. Then I drain the Thule, I lightning bolt the Thule, and then the Thule's on double ones to be, the Mythican is on double ones to be wavered. So I'm like, that's good enough. Wavered's fine. So I at least get 1 Dragon Breath into the Street Sharks, but I only managed 2 wounds. I would have much preferred to throw all of that into the Sharks this turn. It would have been really good, but just this mistake with his wizard placement. Just forgetting what a Mythican was. There's no reason to be over here, right? Like, I could be over here helping this combat instead, which would have been much better. Just flown over here, drained into the side. Much better, but I didn't, so here I am instead. I do manage to kill those 2 units off though, so that's great. But everything else, and then and MacLeod just one-shots that Kraken. MacLeod, I think, does like 10 wounds or some crazy amount, and then the Impalers come through and hit with like 11 or 12 4 pluses, 15 attacks. So I'm all about that. We roll up the Kraken pretty easily, and so it ends up pretty good right now. I would have preferred to be able to drop down the the Gigas as well. I only managed 2 wounds on him, but that's a big ask, right? Like, this is a 4+ to hit unit with only 9 attacks, very high variance, and then 4+ to wound. Again, if I had just put this over here, it could have maybe swung it, but I didn't, so live and learn. On the right, this is a bit of a disaster. I roll insanely hot on those little Thule right there. I get the Bane Chant off on him, so I'm hitting 30 attacks on 5s and then wounding on 2s. I have around 5 wounds then, on average. I think I do 7 or 8 wounds, which is great, and then I waver them. So I think they were 10, 12, something like that. So I roll that hot 4. Or I can't roll a 4 twice, so I get a 3. Yeah, must be a 3 then. I know I didn't double 1 it, or I would have had a picture here. But, God, that just sucks. I would have loved to have those guys out of there, just ready to fight sharks. But, alas, doesn't work. And we move into turn 3. So the Trident Realm turn 3. First off, we've got the Wavered Knucker just disengaging, nimble, pivoting, and then going backwards 4.5 inches. The other Knucker goes into my flank. That's not great, especially now that I'm not inspired with that unit because MacLeod ran off. But it's only 12 attacks, right? Like, that's, 8 hits and 7 wounds? Yeah, it's a 9 to kill me. Whatever. I would prefer not to die, but, it's not the worst odds. The Gigas here going into my Dragon Breath. Yeah, that thing's dead. And just showing off the picture, I guess, again. I do really like my opponent's units here. You can see these base extenders. I know they intend to buy some some acrylic ones to plug these in because they're for multiple armies. And he was saying he wanted to buy blue ones, right, to look like water. And I was like, well, your water's not really blue, and it's very light, right? Like, that's like a deep ocean blue. When you're doing stuff like this, I always recommend black. Because same thing with base edging, you edge your stuff with black, you do stuff like this in black, because when people look at it, what you automatically read is the black is not part of it. It's a framing device, right, for the actual unit. So you look at the black and you go, oh, I get it. That's not supposed to be part of the expression here. So anyway, just thought I'd talk about that because the army is pretty close to done otherwise. And over here, the Trident King just coming around the side here. Gonna shoot into one of these units. Now, could fire into the Impalers with 12 breath. 12 breath on 4s and 3s, because I think it's piercing. Or could shoot MacLeod. MacLeod, I believe, has stealthy. The Chronebound might also have stealthy. Otherwise, this is definitely the best target. And then there's, of course, the Dragon Breath, which is not blocked by anything because individuals do not block line of sight. So, I don't know. There's a few juicy things to go for here, but otherwise, I don't think any of them die to this breath attack, right? Like, because on average it hits 6 times. Even if it gets that high variance of 8, my def is high enough to probably survive it. And lastly, these treat sharks. So, I did not notice that they had a sneaky little flank here. It's, again, not the end of the world, because butchers are butchers. This is what they're built to do. But this unit of Gigas going into the front of the butchers, especially now that there's no Bane Chant, almost certainly cannot take me in a fight. Because it's only 12 attacks, right? 12 attacks on 3s, and then 3s again with Vicious. It's probably not enough wounds to actually get through my dash 15, especially now that I am inspired, or still inspired. But Street Sharks to the side, that'll do it. I think my opponent pops the J-Boots right now to make sure that it's 36 attacks on 3s instead of on 4s. And over here on the right, these sharks, because of that small gap, can weasel their way past the wavered Thule and into my spears. This was one of those things, like, maybe it was just that the train got messed up when I was looking at it doing the charge, and I went, oh, it's impossible, but it was definitely possible. So, just a bit of a, some messy gameplay. And then Ector goes into the flank here. Now, I know my opponent doesn't hold up this because when they did it, this is, I don't know, I do it in tournaments too, but in this game I was like, keep in mind that my spears, which you can see sticking out right there, the other spear unit, I'm like, that unit has the hammer of measured force, and that's Ector's flank. Unless you kill those spearmen, I'm going to charge in with 30 attacks on 5s and then 4s, right? And even Ector's afraid of that. So not the best plan, in my opinion. And in the end, yeah, you see this picture. Ector has gone to hide. Could have popped out on the side here just to shoot Wind Blast at my other spearman here. But I talked with my opponent a fair bit on this, and I'm like, I don't think it's worth it because you have to roll a 2+, or either 2 or 3 hits to knock me away on 8, which is perfectly reasonable. It's a reasonable ask, right? But there's no reason to do that, right? Like, or there's not a great reason to do that. Because if you miss, I will charge Ector unimpeded, because part of my turn was getting out my laser. Again, this train floats, but going like, if I run, I don't run into the corner of this train, meaning that Ector, if they're poking out a little bit behind the sharks, the path of least resistance for me is to go forward past the sharks and then pivot in, right? Because otherwise I can't charge because I'm too wide. So yeah, just you're creating the problem again, only now I'm not hindered if you don't hit that 2 or 3. So instead decides to just go like, why? Just put them all behind the unit. And that'll be that. And let's move into... What is this showing? Oh, this is the Trident King. Yeah, so the Trident King takes aim, fires at my Dragon Breath that didn't get charged, and I was like, the only good thing about the Street Sharks here charging into the flank of the Butchers is that the Dragon Breath will get another turn of shooting, and I'm like, sweet. I'd love that. But instead, the Trident King just hits with eight attacks, I want to say, and were I Def 5, would have done nothing. But instead, does like 7 wounds. And of course, because that's the way this game is going, it dies in one shot. So it's a 10-12, 5 twice bam, which isn't the biggest ask. And we move into now the end of turn shot. So starting on the left, yep, this Knucker runs into the flank of those Impalers and just picks them up in one go, which is fair enough. I don't make my opponent roll this. Now, in a tournament game or... in a game that started a bit earlier, I would have made my opponent roll this, but we didn't even get started till probably like 9:30, which is pretty standard for us. And on top of it, my opponent had just played a 4.5-hour game, which until round 6 was the longest of the CTAs. So, I wasn't going to make them roll a bunch of dice for no reason. So if we were on a clock or any of those reasons, I would have done it. But anyway, we just double won it. Doesn't get it, I die. Then we move into the Sharks. The Sharks kill off my Butchers pretty easily, which you might imagine, right? And on the far right, I think I've got a picture of it. Nope. On the far right, yeah, my opponent rolls in here with the stupid Sharks, has 18 attacks, 3s and 3s, and sinks 12 wounds, which is nuts. I mean, it's really good. And then to top it off, the cherry on top rolls a 9 and wavers me. So I'm like, are you fucking kidding? Not only did you roll insane on your hits and wounds, you then rolled insane on your nerve. I mean, yeah, stuff that happens. I think I was a little tilted at this point. I mean, I definitely get tilted in this game, and I think it is at this point because this unit had been picked up pretty easily on some, and we're not talking like I was trying to roll 8 dice at a 4-inch surge and go, I bet I'll make it, right? Like I have 1, 2, 3 units here that I just go, well, I guess I lose. So I definitely haven't lost at this point, but I definitely got tilted, especially after I spent my turn trying to correct for a Mythicin I had forgotten about. And yeah, at this point, I mean, you never give up in a game. Sometimes I give up in a game. We all give up. But try not to give up in games because, you don't learn that much that way. You don't really know if it really was just dice or are you playing poorly. Probably you're playing poorly. Lord knows I do. So yeah, you don't need to take all these risks all the time. Just try to find a better solution. And the best way to become a better player is definitely to play games. So keep playing. And with that, we move into turn 3 for the, I almost said Night Sagas, for the Twilight Kin. So for the Twilight Kin, I move one of my Mind Screeches forward. This is the one that was over here behind the now dead Dragon's Breath. It should be Dragon's Breath, not Dragon Breath. It's weird. Anyway, so this guy flies onto the hill to shoot into the 8 wounded Knucker. I need to get rid of this right now. just because I'm playing down. My opponent has so much more tempo than I do, due to some pretty good nerve checks and some, hot dice all around. So I need to keep pace at this point, especially because, again, I'm second player. So yeah, I'm just going to try to play out answers here. Kill off this Knucker, hope to reduce that down. I fly the other Mind Screech to this token. This is a mistake, I think, because I can shoot now, right? I have a lightning bolt that can lend some help downfield, but I think it's more important that I actually move this into my zone, because again, it's only turn 3 and I'm the bottom of the round, meaning that I think I want to kill off this one Knucker and then be in the zone, so the other Knucker can't just come around and claim this right now, right? I because of my deployment mistake of putting one of my objectives way too far for me to get to, I think I needed to pull this back for a turn. But instead, I move forward to burn an objective and go over here. Again, I was a little tilted, so no, mistakes are going to happen, and quickly. So over here, yeah, I have to go after the sharks. I hate that they have ensnare. But I have to go into them. At least they are def 3, and this is a crush 1 unit. Def 3 is exactly what Twilight can look for. They're not the punchiest army in terms of getting through defense, but we do have a lot of attacks. That volume, quantity is a type of quality. That's what we've got here. I then move one of my drains, Drain Queen. I think this is the Drain 9 one, and then that's the Drain 6 one. So that's the idea. I'm just going to drain into this combat, and then Lightning Bolt over here. And if the Drain 9 does enough, because it's only at 2 damage, I might just drain over here. But that's... that might be a bit lucky. I'll probably do the Lightning Bolt first to see how that goes, and then I'll see about this, right? That's a smart play. Oh, at least I hope I do that. And then over here, I charge MacLeod into the Trident King. So first off, I'm going in here. I'm like, well, I'm mighty. I just need to do 1 wound. It's not my favorite thing. I do not like this because I'm only hitting on 4s, right? Due to that ensnare. And this Knucker can charge me. This Knucker could also charge this this wizard, but there just wasn't a better place to put her. I needed the drain right now, and I needed her over here to do it. So, yeah, not my best plan originally, because when I pick up the dice to attack here, I pick up 6 dice, and my opponent goes, "Don't you double your attacks?" And I go, no. It's individuals, right? Like it's monsters, titans, individuals. It is not. MacLeod doubles attacks against monsters, titans, and heroes. That is way better. That is significantly better, because there's so many heroes that are, type chariot or type large cav, right, that are running around right now, and doubling your attacks against them is enormous, because their nerve isn't that great. Granted, the Trident Kings it's a 14-16, but if you're talking like, I don't know, a battle captain on a rhinosaur, that's a dash 15. I'll take Mickey into that, right? So, yeah, just what a good character. Super good. Can't say enough. Over here, yeah, so I'm wavered, and here are some mistakes I made because of it. Mistake 1. I disengage with this unit of spearmen, because I'm thinking, yeah, here's the 12 wounds. Ugh. So I disengage with this unit of spearmen, because I'm thinking, let's limit the number of flank charges I'm going to get, because if I stay over here, which is where I was fighting the Thule, when the sharks go in for another go, they're going to be flanking me, along with this, but whatever, that's going to be flanking me anyway. So I disengage and then roll to the side. I'll explain why that's a mistake and my opponent's turn. Well, actually, right now, let's just do it. The second mistake is I positioned this spear horde incorrectly because of the first mistake. Because I disengaged, obviously, these sharks, which can see these spears, can now just pivot and go in here. Because this unit has 12 wounds on it. Why do they need to attack it? This has 10 attacks to the flank, right? It can just do it right there, at least get a waiver and then kill me the next turn. It's only turn 3. And then the Thule will be unwavered because cool, and be able to lend some attacks as well. Granted, they're going to be hitting on 4s, but they have 20 attacks, right? Like, I should have just let the spears go and not just, continue throwing the baby out with the bathwater and trying to get more value out of them. I mean, this is perfect. Not perfect, but this is a sunk cost fallacy where I'm like, I have to get value out of this. No, it's already dead, let it go, right? Just try to not make it worse for your other units. But otherwise, I like how this is going on the flank. I took 1 wound on this because of Ector in a previous turn, but I have now placed my ASB behind it to block a Wind Blast. I'm going to be burning this 1 token. I like it quite a bit. And, you know, in my head, I'm like, oh, and then the sharks charge here, kill it, and then I can go in, blah, blah, blah. Or just, more realistically, run away, because they'll have to go in here on the front, right? And then they'll have to turn to face me if they want to do anything, so I'm just going to run to the other objective and sacrifice both my spears for +2 points. I'll take it. But, alas, I didn't think it out well enough. And here is the end of turn shot. So, yeah, this is quite the deadly game. Except for my turn 2, where I got a few waivers, which weren't particularly unlucky. They just weren't lucky, right? I send the Mind Screech into the Knucker. I do 1 wound to it. It dies. I then fire... I think all of my drain into this unit, because I do go for the Lightning Bolt here. I only manage 1 wound, so it's not quite good enough. I get 1 wound. So yeah, anyway, I drain into here with drain 15, which brings them to like a 12 wounds or some crazy amount, and then quite easily finish them off with a not double ones nerve with the guys here. So that's pretty good. This unit, I mentioned before I had to place my Summoner Crone there. That is because there's no place I can go where if I don't kill this unit that only had 2 damage on it, right? Keep in mind, I'm going to get flanked by these Gigas. I just can't help it. So instead what I did was use the impassable terrain and my 1 character to make it so the Gigas cannot land. There is no place that they can go where they do not cover one of my models or the impassable terrain. So that is why it has to be there, so on and so forth. Can't get charged by the Gigas, but it can be charged by 1 Knucker, which I'm okay with. I mean, I'm not feeling great about that, but I'm okay with it. It shouldn't kill me, right? So I end up killing the sharks off, and then I turn to face the Gigas up here. Actually, originally, I decided to overrun, because my opponent and I are sitting there talking and going like, yeah, so nothing can see me, right? Nothing can charge me, including the Knucker. We talked about it specifically. And my opponent's like, yeah, so it's all good. And then we do the overrun, and he's like, I charge you in the rear then? And I'm like, yeah, and he's like, okay, well, here's the thing. I specifically told you that was impossible, so until you moved it, and so we're just gonna pull it back, and I can just change my facing. And I'm like, okay, that's fine by me. It's what I should have done in the first place, but it was only after, again, we were playing late, so it was one of those like, oh yeah, of course that works, and then we do it, and it's like, that doesn't work at all. What fools we were. But anyway, so that's where we end up, right there in the center. Mikael comes in and does 4 wounds to the Trident King. Not the best, but does get a waiver due to Dread. So I'm all about that. Actually, not due to Dread. I just had the waiver anyway. I actually missed a kill by 1. So, alas. I mean, I actually prefer this way. If on a unit like this, right, that's maybe looking into the rear of one of my units, I want a waiver. I'd love a kill, right? But I'd have to roll that twice due to the Trident King's Inspire. So, yeah, I want a waiver right there. So that's great for me. And on the far right, I'll just burn this token and move on. So we go into turn 4. So turn 4 for the Trident Realm. First off, this Knucker just runs into the zone. Again, I should have foregone burning the token with this guy to block this off, but I didn't. So instead, this Knucker's going to get a free burn. At least it's turned away from my army. So it will not be charging into my Summoner Crone, meaning that I'll have another turn of crony goodness to mess around with. Over here, the Gigas charge into the front of my Impalers. Hopefully they don't just kill them in the way that all my other units are dying, because I'm quickly running out of unit strength, or anything that can actually hold an objective. And the center objective, which I'm currently fighting over, you can't burn, right? So I'm going to be here a while. I need to be able to stick it out. So yep, going in the front there, but again, they're only 12 attacks, and they are hindered because they're charging over that wall. This wall. I should circle it. Yep, so we're going for that. Over here, the Trident King regens all 4 wounds back, so fuck you. But anyway, just stays engaged with me. And yes, because I disengaged, these Street Sharks are like, why would we ever fight that? They're dead anyway. We'll just go fight these Spearmen. And I'm like, yes. The letter 3, my friend. I am an expert player. So, yep, that's bad. Hammered, measured force. giving him +1 def as well. I can't wait for the 5s and 4s. And over here, yeah, the Thule go into the front, and the Centurion goes into the flank. Those guys are almost certainly dead. And here we go with the end of turn shot. Not that much to talk about otherwise. Yes, this Knucker does burn that token. The Gigas here just turn to face this combat to see what it was all about. There's nothing over here anymore. There's no more objectives, and these are just Mind Screeches, so who cares? And this Mind Screech isn't even facing the right way to charge him in the rear. Not that it would. And here's a bit of luck for me. Finally, my opponent goes in with the Gigas and does not one-round my unit of Impalers. Does do 8 wounds, though, with 12 attacks on 4s. 4s hit, 2's the wound, of course, with Vicious. But, yeah, yikes. But at least doesn't get the kill, and more importantly, doesn't even get a waiver. Huge route for me there. Great stuff. And on the far right, yeah, my spears here are dead. I did forget to pop their healing potion, in case you're keeping count. But it doesn't matter because my opponent did a ton of wounds. I think these Thule did like 10 wounds or something like that on 4s and 4s. So yeah, they were dead anyway. And then the Street Sharks come in here. They roll. I think they do 9 wounds to me, which is it's not that bad. It's a little above, I guess, a little above average, but that's not that bad. At least I didn't get wavered again, so I'm fine. I'm fine with this. This is fine. Everything's on fire. And we move into Night Stalker's turn 4, or Night Stalker's really Twilightkin turn 4. Twilightkin turn 4. First off, we've got the Spearmen going into the front of the Street Sharks because we don't have anything else to do. And, we could always roll crazy. We send the Impalers into the front of the Gigas. It looks like my dial has been... here's a secret. I cast Drain Life a few times, so my dial has already been pivoted down. And... yeah, Mickey goes back into the Trident King. I take my boots girl. These boots were made for draining, and drain is what they'll do. So I place myself, so I'm 6 inches away from this, 6 inches away from this, so I can drain whatever I want, and then I can heal this unit as well. And if the Trident King disengages from me, cannot charge this. Can charge my other wizard, my other crone, but not the Drain 9 one. So she's relatively safe. I just chase around these Gigas with one of the Mind Screeches. I could have charged in the flank. I don't see the point in it. So instead I'm just going to throw out a pithy little lightning bolt in my free time. And here we go with an end of turn shot. This Mind Screech didn't get talked about. It just ran. So I guess this one is actually the one that was right here on the hill and turned around. Yeah. This one just ran. And it's because in my head I was like, well, if I get to turn 7... it's mathematically possible for me to get to here if I just run 12 every turn. So 12, 12, I can do it, right? But there has to be a turn 7. So we're running away for right now, and I don't care about this Knucker. I think it's going to take it too long to turn around. Well, it's not going to take it that long, but if it comes into the combat, I think I will already be in too much trouble to win. So that's the idea. And at the end of the combat... I do 1 wound with my lightning bolt, so that's cool. But more importantly, between all my drain and fighting, I kill off that unit of Gigas. That's great. I turn to face these Gigas with my horde here. It's not the best. It's not my favorite thing because I still have wounds on me. I think I still have 3 wounds. So my drain didn't do wonders. I only drained back 5 of my 9. But I do end up doing quite a number onto the Trident King. I get him up to 8. That's because of the Drain 9 plus Mickey. So I'm feeling good about that. That's a 5 to waiver, and of course I fail it. So I roll 4. Happens. But the big thing on the far right, here it is. I'm like, yeah. So your Street Sharks are great, right? Well, I'm just going to one-shot them. Easy. So I roll into them. I have 30 attacks on 5s. I wound on 4s due to the Hammer of Measured Force. I have Elite, and I do 10 wounds, and then just roll back-to-back 7s. Easy. So kill it off, and I'm just staring down the barrel of these guys. I might be able to survive this because... and I'll talk about the ASP in a second here, but I might be able to survive this because, 1, I'm inspired, right? And 2, this unit, so the Knight Centurion has Pathfinder, but I have Phalanx, right? And that's a large cab, so it'll be -1 to hit me anyway. These guys will be -1 to hit me, and Ector will just do Ector things. Ector could fail on 6 attacks, right? So I have 10 wounds, which is so many, but I could survive this, right? Like, just a small variance going my way, and I've got this, and then I can kill off the Thule, and I'm a huge threat, and I've messed up this whole zone. At the bare minimum, I've made it so these units, because they're gonna need to go together, are gonna have to deal with this instead of burning this one zone, leaving me in the lead. So that's the idea. Lastly, let's talk about the ASB. I originally wanted the ASB to be right here. In fact, in a previous picture, you can see it right there. It's not where it ends up. And that's because I was like, all right, so I'm back here. I can move to here, because I measure it. And I'm like, I'm within 18, right? I can move to here, still inspire, and be out of the charge arc of this, and then cast Bane Chant. And I'm like, it's just barely out of 12. Fuck. So I can basically move, I can be out of the line of sight of this, and inspire this. Or I can inspire this and Bane Chant this. Those are my options. So instead I decide to go, fuck it, let it charge me. I'll just take the inspire. So I'm standing on the hill like a professional. Also, I don't think the Naiad Worm Rider Centurion can one-shot me. I'm still relatively tough for a 5-attack thing to deal with. So with that, we move on to turn 5. So turn 5 for the Trident Realm. The King only regenning 2. Yes, nice. Got it. Goes into Mickey. Hopefully I can hold up. I mean, Mickey is def 5 with dash 16, so should be able to on average. But we'll see. The Gigas go into the front of the Impalers for the second round. I mean, it's the second unit of Gigas, but so I guess it's their first round. But the second round for my Impalers, which is the hero of the story. So we're going to go with that. So yeah, they're going to go in there. Again, Gigas have so few attacks that I'm hoping just to be able to hold on. I would love to not be wavered, but really I just need to not die. That's the big thing. And yep, just showing off that combat a little bit. And over here, everything goes into me. Originally, we did the math, and it's like this Centurion does like maybe 1 damage to me, but that +1 is big right now. Like these have to go. So everything goes in, and we'll see how that goes. Here's the end of turn shot. Starting on the far left, we have a Waver. Again, whew, I need to be alive. So this is great. Of course, I'd rather not be wavered, but I'm a 14-16 unit. I'm all about that. This is fine. Everything's great. Mickey doesn't go down, takes 5 wounds. My opponent does not roll back-to-back 11s. Does actually roll an 11, but not back-to-back. And then I Iron Resolve 1 wound back, so that's good. And over here, yeah, my spears end up dying. So it was actually pretty exciting. My opponent rolled the Naiad Centurion first, missed with all 5 attacks, and I'm like, oh, that's good. Then Ector went, only hit with 3 out of 6 attacks. I'm like, yes, but then sunk all 3, and I'm like, all right, so now we have these hindered Thule, right? And then, of course, they sink 10 wounds. And I'm like, all right, we got it. And yeah, they blow up the spears pretty easily, and off they go. So we're going to go into turn 5 for the Twilight Kin. It is a struggle right now. I cannot get to this unless I move this Mind Screech in a direct line forever, and we get an extra turn, and no one blocks my way, and no one charges me. It's bad. I do have Pathfinder, so screw you, terrain. So yeah, I can't really get to that. I can't block this because I don't have anything over here. I mean, I have a bunch of individuals, but they're not mighty, so I'd have to charge into this, do a wound, trap it there. No, that doesn't even trap it there, right? Because it can just... I'd have to waver it. So I'd have to roll in here, do a wound to the Naiad Centurion, waver it, and then these units can't score. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Turn 5 for the Twilight Kin. First off, we've got Mikael going back into the King. We have these guys just backing an inch off. It doesn't put me in charge range of anything on the right, but I want to make sure that I have the option of turning around and dealing with stuff. But I do set up everything I have that can shoot to shoot. The Knucker is over here. It can charge this Mind Screech in the front. The other Mind Screech is out of its line of sight. And then I place this guy, or this guy directly behind the train, so cannot be seen. And then this one's just too far away. Or maybe it can't get past Mickey. I don't remember what exactly, but it can't be charged. So none of my shooters are gonna get charged here, and we're just gonna drain this forever. The Drain 9 one, it is back, so I have a choice of this or that. Like on the magic, if I sink all 12 Lightning Bolt, there's no reason to drain that, so I'll drain this way. But yeah, that's the idea. I do have a Pain Train lined up, so if I don't do anything to the Trident King, it can kill Mickey, overrun into this, and then overrun into my Impalers and just, wreck my day. But my day is already on the cusp of being wrecked, so we gotta live our life. And we're gonna do it by shooting. The ASB here just runs off. It's blocking a little bit to stop units from getting into the zone. I don't think I'm in charge range of anything, but I only go 6, so I can cast Bane Chant onto Mickey to make sure I sink the wounds on the Trident King here. And here we go with the end of turn shot. Yeah, this goes thankfully well. Again, this is a super bloody game. Everything's just dying in one shot. So I fire all my Lightning Bolt, all my Drain into the unit of Gigas. I do pretty well. I get quite a few wounds healed off of this unit. And yeah, I'm just staring here going, please don't fail the nerve. I don't kill it off. Then Mickey goes into the Trident King. I have no drain to spare. So Mickey goes into the Trident King alone, and it's at 6 wounds. Thankfully, I sink it because of the Bane Chant, actually. Really helped. Gave me, I think, 2 extra wounds. And I think I rolled around exactly what I needed. So really helpful there. And that'll be it. There's not a lot of units left, so we go into turn 6. So turn 6, we've got a Knucker going into the front of my Impalers. Of course, it would be great if they didn't kill me, because I only have 3 wounds on me, right? Like, it's only got 6 attacks, right? It has to fail sometime. I've got 3 wounds on me. It's charging down a hill. No, it's not charging down. It doesn't matter. Wounds be on a 2 anyway. But it only has 6 attacks. That's like 3 or 4 wounds. I should be absolutely fine. I'm inspired. Multiple sources of inspiring. I am pretty safe in this. Then my opponent takes the Naya Centurion, decides to... Yeah, I guess he could charge the ASB, and I just went, I don't think you can kill me, and even if you do, you have to roll. Yeah, okay. So originally they charged the ASB and go, okay, so I'm gonna roll this up, and I go, well, is that good? Because you have to kill it, you have to hit, wound, nerve twice, then you have to get an overrun, which is slightly more than 1, while you could just go and touch the zone anyway, right? My opponent goes, right. Actually, I don't even think I'm the one that told them that. I think we just worked our way through it. I think they went, I'd have to hit wound and roll that 1, and I'm like, yeah, that's true. And then, so instead they just come up to clip the zone to make sure that they are at least somewhat part of the game. And yeah, the Thule, yeah, just couldn't kill him. So mad about that, because now it gives my opponent the 1 unit they need, the +1 unit they needed to just run over and burn this. So we are currently tied, but only because I'm holding the center, right? And there's no way I'm going to get to that other one, especially because I've turned my Mind Screech for 1 turn to Lightning Bolt the Gigas, right? So I physically can't make it even with a turn 7 to the other one. So that's just a dead zone. And here's Ector getting ready, just moves forward, to take some pot shots. It's going to take a shot into my Summoner Crone with Drain 9, because why not? And here we go. My opponent, 8 attacks, sinks 7 on a 4+, easy peasy, sinks 5 wounds, okay, and then boxcars it to kill me. Granted, the first roll was not a boxcar, but the one that killed her definitely was. And I was like, yeah, this is just one of those games where anything that gets even a sideways glance just explodes. And I don't mean on my side, I mean on any side, obviously. Everything's just dead. So, with that, yeah, and then the fucking Knucker comes in, does 6 hits, 6 wounds, and bam, bam, dead, right? Even with 6 hits, 6 wounds, that's a 7 twice again to kill me. And I'm like, please stop. I'm so sore. I need to go to work in the morning, and I don't want to go bow-legged. And he's like, what about a bit more? So, yeah, kills off my Impalers, and then the Knucker runs into the center. With that, this is actually Twilightkin turn 6. So, Twilightkin turn 6, Mikael's like, well, I have a charge on that Knucker, so I'm going to take it. Goes into the rear, Giggity, hopes to get it out. I do place my ASB right here for the time being, because I'm like, oh, I'll hit him with the the Bane chant again. Then I'm like, oh, the Knucker's def 4. So instead, I after this picture is taken, I just ran it over here behind my Mind Screech to give me a backup Inspire and a backup Individual in case I needed him for a turn 7. Then I fly the Mind Screech here to tow into the zone. The idea is to just Wind Blast this guy backwards out of the zone and just deal with it there. The other Mind Screech decides that, well, I could go for the double Wind Blast, right? So Wind Blast 6, or I could just fly in here. So instead of shooting, I just fly the blue one all the way into the zone, so I have at least unit strength 2, so I'm contesting it in case I fail to kill this and fail to Wind Blast 6 that for 1. Or there's a turn 7, right? So yeah, that's the plan for right now. I move my last drain 6 over here just to drain the Knucker while I'm at it. And here we go. Yeah, at the end of the go, I don't have any more models, so we're just going to look at look at this pile. You can see the ASB is now hiding back here. I do manage to kill off the Knucker pretty easily, and I Wind Blast the Centurion pretty far. So here is the end of turn shot while we roll off for turn 7, and there is no turn 7. My opponent was actually like, I'm not playing a fucking turn 7, like as I'm rolling rolling the die, and not out of malice, just out of pure exhaustion. Thankfully, we didn't get one, so pretty tight game. It ended up being a draw because I burnt 2 of my objectives. My opponent burnt all 3 of theirs, but then I have the center, so it's a 3-3 draw, just barely. And yeah, it's pretty brutal here. There's basically nothing left on the table. I think I have I've got like 370 victory points over them, which I'm not even sure is a +1. So this might be a pure 10-10 draw with no additional attrition, right? Which is pretty nuts. And yeah, a great game for me because I definitely, and both of us, my opponent hasn't played their Trident Realm in a while. I've played a number of games with Twilight Kin, but none of them in this style, right? Almost all of them have been a hyper-aggressive double horseman style. So yeah, this was an interesting game. Even making all those mistakes, it was just wild seeing the dice fly. And I hope you guys liked it. And until next time, bye.